Welcome to today's session with PriceBeam in our series of thought leaders in pricing and RGM. My name is Finn Hansen. I'm the co-founder at PriceBeam, and I'm very pleased to be here today with Joe Enright, who is a senior vice president of finance and RGM at Advantage Solutions. Joe has had a long career, I dare say, in RGM, having worked in many different companies, including other CPG companies like Johnson Johnson, Kellogg's, Reckitt, and now at Advantage Solutions. So welcome, Joe. Very excited to have you here.
Thanks, Finn. I'm honored to be here.
Great. Maybe we just start with hearing a little bit about how you came into RGM and what kind of path you've had in the RGM space.
Yeah, well, I started my career in analytics. I was working for Nielsen. It's now called Nielsen IQ, in the consumer packaged goods space, and then made it onto the consumer packaged goods side at Johnson & Johnson, as you mentioned. There, I was in various finance and sales support analytical roles. And in one of my roles, I was doing a lot of heavily involved in the S&OP forecast process. And I saw how we struggled with understanding pricing and the impact that it would have on our business. And there was a new pricing team that was being set up.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that as an opportunity. I've often said that I kind of look at myself as a firefighter, right? A lot of people would run away from some of those complicated topics like pricing, and a firefighter runs towards the problem. And so I saw that as appealing to me. It was a white space. It seemed like a white space that needed to be solved. So that's why I kind of went in that direction. And about a year or two later, we started revenue growth management at Johnson & Johnson. For those who don't know, revenue growth management started in the travel industry and, hotels and airlines, and then made its way into consumer packaged goods, led by a lot of the beverage and direct store delivery companies. And then we were probably part of that second wave of companies that started doing revenue growth management, not only focused on pricing, but also including the other pillars like promo optimization, trade promo optimization, your trade investments with your customers to grow your brands, PPA, mix management, those sorts of things. And what I saw at that point in time was, there were a lot of pricing things that we would do, and we'd say, hey, we're going to take price up on this SKU, like 5%, let's say. But then we would see the net impact only be 2 or 3% for any number of reasons. But sometimes that would be we didn't change the promo price.
Yeah.
Right. So we take the base price up, but the promo price would stay put. So we weren't getting price realization on our promos, or it would just be given back in trade some other way in terms of margin protection or margin enhancement for the customer. So when I saw how all these things got connected and how pricing couldn't just stand alone, it really needed to connect to everything else. Right. That was the big light bulb moment for me, and how I could really have an impact and drive value by bringing all of those things together. And so once I kind of saw that, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do now. That's the next thing that I want to get into, is the fuller revenue growth management versus pricing strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how you mentioned was a bit of a white space. I guess the RGM function has also grown, I guess, in the companies you worked in and in many other companies, right? It used to be almost like a side task for finance to now being a standalone function, at least in some companies.
Yeah, I would say that revenue growth management has always been done. We just didn't call it that. And like you said, it was probably you bring up finance. I think it was in a few different places. Like we talk about trade marketing and sales strategy, things like that, right? So I think a lot of those teams were doing it too. I mean, really, it's a lot of the analytics that help support AMPs or your 4Ps, however you're talking about it, right? Your price, your promo, with the placement, your assortment of products, right? So it's just the analytics behind it. But there were things being done by different groups: marketing, trade marketing, sales, finance. But it wasn't all pulled together the same way it is now. That's how I see it.
And you think that's that's an advantage. It's for the betterment of the company that is now in one function. I
Yeah,
mean,
for
you
sure.
work in RGM, so obviously continue.
I'm a little biased. I'm a little biased. Uh, yeah, I think it just I think the big benefit is the discipline, right?
Hmm.
To connect all those dots together,
Yeah.
all those levers, right, of RGM, put them all in the analytics for that, have more holistic views of how one impacts the other.
Hmm.
And revenue growth management operates a little bit differently in each company, right?
Mm.
Some have it. Some would say that they have it embedded in the business, and you do have like the trade marketers doing these things or marketing doing these things, and maybe the revenue growth management team is more managing the analytic tools that are deployed out to those teams to do those things. Other places is more centralized.
Hmm.
There's even a model where like you have like a central team that's doing kind of more the strategy type
Yeah.
pieces, and then you have like more of an executional team that might be embedded in like the sales teams, for example, right? On how do we execute RGM at this customer.
Hmm. Hmm. So does that put then specific or pressure or difficulty on recruiting into an RDM team? Where do you get people from in
Yeah,
modern
that's an
RDM
excellent
rather than
question.
let's say classical pricing or trade marketing? Where do
Yeah,
they
that's a
come?
great question. So I think I'll answer it in two ways. One, there's kind of like the skills that I think are needed,
Hmm.
right? And then there's the places that you can go find those skills. So first, it really helps if you understand how the business works. It have like so any commercial experience, right? With understanding the P&L, understanding the business, that's going to be very helpful. So whether
Mm.
that comes from finance, whether that comes from sales, having managed the P&L, you know, as long as you understand how your business is working, that's
Mm.
one, right? Then the next role, I call it an analytics translator, right? It's how can you help others understand what actions to take based on what the analytics are saying, right? So
Yeah.
I think a common flaw that I've seen before is somebody goes, okay, well, this is what the data is telling me to do, so this is what we should do, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes the data can't tell you all the nuances of the business, of the category, of the retailer, right? And
Mm.
so you have to inject some business knowledge
Yeah.
um, on top of that data, right?
Hmm.
And help the team make the right decisions based on that. So there's probably some like gray, there's a lot of gray
Mm.
in that space too, of how do you apply the analytics
Hmm.
and take the right action.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, it can come from those are two of the important skills, and then it's solving problems, right?
Hmm.
You know, so that's what I get fired up about is like, oh, there's a problem. Okay, let me
Mm.
be a part of the solution. Let me figure out how to solve this.
Hmm.
And then in terms of recruiting, yeah, you can look for other art. You can, I mean, at this point, there are RGM professionals out there, right?
Yeah.
Like myself. Um, but they're still not as the supply is
Mm.
exceeded by the demand at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, I look to salespeople, I look to finance people, I look at analytics people, but they have to have that combination of soft skills as well.
Hmm.
So, and
Hmm.
what I would also say in recruiting is that it's important to acknowledge what your blind spot might be. And
Mm.
everybody's got some blind spots.
Sure.
And when you think about building a team and recruiting, how do you put together complementary skills
Hmm.
and that some that might help cover up some of your blind spots, and
Mm.
then
Mm.
how do you bring together a team that really complements each other? So on some of the best teams that I've been on, we've had like the person who's like the finance expert, right?
Hmm.
And you can find specific roles for them in terms of identifying like the organizational KPIs that are important and things like that, right? Financial KPIs. We've had the sales teams that can help us communicate with our sales partners,
Yeah.
tie revenue growth management into joint business planning or joint value creation stories,
Hmm.
right? And the analytics people who understand, like, I know how the price elasticity models are working, or I know how price beam, I know the secret sauce of price beam, and I can tell you how to use this information, right? So
Hmm.
um, you can recruit from a bunch of different places. It's really about building a team that has complementary
Hmm.
skills,
Hmm.
right? And with that commercial knowledge, financial acumen, an intellectual curiosity, and bringing that all together.
Sounds very much like a general management training school.
Yeah, well, I mean, RGM in some places is a path to, the next level, whatever that
Yeah.
is. And
Hmm.
if you're in sales, for example, often your trade marketing or sales strategy or comstrat, whatever your company calls it, there's very few HQ-based sales roles that you can be into to get to like that VP of sales.
Yeah.
So right. So often RGM is positioned for salespeople
Hmm.
as another option for them
Hmm.
to kind of plug into. How do I get a strategic role and leverage what I've learned out in the field so that I can get to the sales director, sales VP,
Mm.
and then ultimately general management.
Sure. And in terms of the skills, I know you work both in RGM functions that were primarily US focused and also in some truly global roles.
Yeah.
And apart from having to take meetings very early in the morning or late in the evening,
Mhm.
anything specific you're looking for when you're building global teams, that skills just maybe a little bit more if you have to deal with 10 different countries
Yeah.
every day?
Yeah, so in a global role, you do have to be a little bit more flexible, and you have to kind of protect your time. So, yeah,
Hmm.
there are days where you start early and you might end late, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going nonstop the entire time,
No, sure.
right? Like I personally value some gym time, so I've always figured out, okay, where's the best place in the day
Hmm.
for me to do that, right? And it's shifted back and forth. There have been times where it was like early afternoon was like a sweet spot because like
Hmm.
when maybe one market is
Yeah.
like going to bed, the other market hasn't woken up yet. So like you do
Hmm.
what you need to do then. I think, but beyond just being able to manage your own schedule and being flexible, I think you have to be able to adapt to other cultures. So again, in some of the projects that I've run where I felt like I was most successful, I was able to take some cultural training.
Hmm.
There are companies out there that offer that
Oh,
that,
yeah,
that
yeah,
help
yeah,
you understand different cultures
yeah.
and how you need to communicate with them,
Hmm.
um, what resonates with them. And I found that really helpful as because you have to take some markets, you might have to take more of a direct approach.
Hmm.
Other markets are more nuanced,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And
mm,
so understanding that. So I think that's really it's the adaptability, and it kind of goes along with an analytics translator on like, okay,
hmm.
do you understand how to communicate what the analytics are saying and what the business needs? And I would
Mm,
also say that you need to take a more curious approach when you're in a global role. Um, I'll replay this. I worked for American multinational companies and then gone to other markets. And I've also worked for a European country and worked in the US. And there's
hmm.
always this percent, whichever side of the fence you're on, if the local market tends to think, okay, well, here comes somebody who's going to try to tell me what to do, and they don't know anything about my business.
Yeah.
I'm very being very direct, simplified about it, right? And so you have to one acknowledge that that could be how somebody's going to perceive you coming into the role into a market, right? So, but what helps is you got to roll up your sleeves
Hmm.
and get into the data with them and take a curious approach to understanding their business,
Hmm.
understanding their market, how it might be different, or um, how they might think it's different from your business at home,
Hmm.
right? And so that's kind of those are softer skills that are
Mm.
harder to
Sure.
to like test out, but like that's what would make a successful
Hmm.
global person in any role, not just RGM.
Mm. I guess also, I mean, we see with some of the data we collect that both the willingness to pay and also the prices, the actual implemented prices are very different around the world, right? I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
for a somewhat standardized CPD product brand, whether it's a chocolate bar or a
Yeah.
beverage or something, it very often actually is 2 or 3 times more expensive on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Mhm.
if that's by strategic intent or it's because we all just try to maximize the price we can get, or if it's almost an accident that it happens.
I think there's something in the structural economics that
Mhm,
make it that way, right? When you're talking about, I worked on a major snacking brand,
mhm,
and really the reason why prices were so much higher in one market versus another, in general, I'm generalizing
sure,
here,
sure.
was because of where the product had to be produced
Mhm,
and how it got from where it was produced to where it was sold, and that whole entire value chain, right? So like in some of your developing markets, you might have 2 or 3 layers of distributors and
mm,
brokers that you're going
mm.
through before a product gets to uh, a I'm going to I was going to say convenience store. That's not what they call it, but they're immediate
Yeah,
consumption,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in one of those small stores in India, or in a convenience store in Russia, things like
Mhm,
that, right? So
mhm.
that can be why there's just the structural economics, and the more hands it passes through, the more margins are being taken along the way,
Yeah.
right? So that can often be why that's happening.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm just speaking from my own
No,
experiences.
no,
I've
sure, sure,
different reasons for different companies.
sure. And we've now, I don't know if we're entirely out of the high inflation period yet everywhere, but we've come out of a couple of years where both in, at least in North America and most of Europe and parts of the rest of the world as well, we've had relatively high inflation, much more than we've been used to for many years. And I kind of meet RGM people who think that that was pretty cool because it gave a reason to talk about prices and revenue, and it was almost an opportunity to shine. But now we're getting out of it. What do you think? Can we still increase prices in 24, 25, or do we have to look elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, like you said, so all the information I've seen on inflation in 2024 globally is somewhere between 5 and 6%. So there's still inflation there, and that's the global outlook.
Mm,
To your point, in some of the more developed markets, that might be more like 3%,
yeah.
but there's still 3% inflation, right? So we haven't returned back to the 1 to 2% inflation that we were used to from over 5 years ago now at this point.
Hmm.
Um, so if prices are generally going up, well, then that means there's something going on there, right?
Hmm.
In food, so at Advantage Solutions, my company, we talk about how the inflation is higher in food away from home than
Okay.
it is for food at home.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we're expecting to see a shift now from going to restaurants, going out to eat, to back toward towards the store,
Hmm.
um, and yet store prices are still going up, right?
Mm,
Just not at the same rate as the away from home consumption. So but I will say that I see the same thing you see, Finn, and I think it's that there's sensitivity from the CPG side that, oh, well, it doesn't look like we can take price anymore. And yeah,
mm.
we all rode the wave, right? And took 2, 3, even 4 price increases in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And it made, I think, what the only thing that's really, I mean, yes, the inflation isn't as much as what it was before. So from a pure inflationary standpoint, it's less justifiable. I guess that's how people think about it.
Hmm.
I don't think the need for pricing has changed so much as the the difficulty of the negotiation.
Hmm.
Right now might be harder to build the case for why pricing can be taken,
Hmm.
which then you know that speaks to the importance of having data and information, right? So
Hmm.
a lot like the information that you provide, so that you can make those data-based decisions, and it's
Yeah.
not, understanding what the consumer is willing to pay or
Hmm.
the shopper is willing to pay and why,
Yeah.
right? Like what are the things that are intrinsically valuable to them? And then
Hmm.
how does the pricing then align to all of those things?
Mm.
So I don't think the runway is has ended for pricing.
Hmm.
It feels that way when you talk to a lot of companies. But I think it's about the negotiation and what's in it for the shopper or the consumer.
Hmm.
That's probably a little bit trickier now than it was before.
Mm. I see two stories. One of them is that people talk about moving from a gross price optimization to a net price optimization, and then more
Yeah.
using the promotional spend in CPG or the assortment, or looking for different channels that are more profitable, or looking for
Yep.
SKUs that are more profitable,
Hmm.
rather than, let's say, pushing a 5% gross price
Yep.
increase, because we don't have that excuse anymore of inflation, at least.
Yeah. It's increasing the importance of the other levers of RGM, to
Hmm.
your point. So now we have to be smarter about our trade promotions. And
Hmm.
are we incenting the right behaviors? So whether that's a TPR, or is it a BOGO, like depending on, like, are you trying to just get trial, or are you trying
Yeah.
to generate a basket building,
Hmm.
or to growing the category? Um, Price pack architecture, PPA, is really hot right now.
Mm.
Really hot.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a word, you've probably heard it too, Finn. It's probably not just in the US, but shrinkflation, right?
Sure.
That's a big word now, because that's how CPGs are taking indirect pricing, right? Is through, okay, well, let's play with the pack size and
Mm.
the pricing at the same time, or do one instead of the other. Your mix management, so your outlet mixes that you mentioned, right? That's going to be your channel mix, your customer mix. That's going to be taking on a bigger importance now. Your
Hmm.
product mix, right? So which are your most profitable
Mm.
SKUs? How do you prioritize them over maybe some of the less profitable
Hmm.
parts of your portfolio? So yeah, I mean, it's all, and then just overall, which customers do you invest in,
Hmm.
right? From a trade architecture standpoint, and why? So who are
Mm.
your strategic growth partners? The
Hmm.
ones who are really growing. Like I think there's a tendency to call every customer a strategic customer, or more than probably truly are strategic. But how do you make data-based decisions
Hmm.
um, in terms of how you tier your customers, and then based on that tiering, how do you invest in them? And so those other levers of RGM are much more valuable,
Hmm. Hmm.
as we feel, okay, we can't do as much direct pricing as you said.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's also, I mean, shrinkflation has, well, there's been a couple of very public examples where the retailers in Europe, and I guess in particular, have really made an example out of certain vendors and literally thrown them out of the stores. Probably not forever, but it obviously hurts if you suddenly are missing 3 months of sales from one of your major customers.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that there's a lot of focus also on promotion spend, because it's a little bit, it's not below the radar. Everybody knows that it happens, right? But it's not in your face price increases, and it's not a look here, what, here's a 20-ounce pack that's now a 15-ounce pack. That's very obvious, at least if you get
Yeah.
caught. Whereas whether you're going from a volume, a share volume on promotion from maybe 60% to 55%, most people won't recognize that. You're not
Yep.
you're not the- you're not the bad guy or girl if
Mhm.
you do that. Um,
Yep.
but another question I sometimes get is, well, if we can't do frontline price increases as much as we could the last couple of years, how can RGM help with finding, let's say, top line growth? How can we find either new consumers, or new,
Yeah.
just new business, where, because yes, we've enhanced our profitability by RGM initiatives, or by supply chain initiatives, or production initiatives, but
Mhm.
now we need to show the stock market, the
Mhm.
shareholders, that we can actually grow the top line. Can RGM play a role in top line growth?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So again, going back to PPA, a lot of it is finding where the white spaces are. That's a
Hmm.
lot of what PPA is there. And then I would say the other thing that needs to be done is linking to consumer and shopper insights,
Yeah.
right? So understanding whether that's occasion-based research, and what's the occasion. that
Hmm.
we're trying to target with a certain pack in a certain channel with a certain price, right? And what's the shopper mission? And so what I'll say is, I think, you mentioned retailers making examples of certain manufacturers, and then that causes ripples that nobody wants to be the next one, right? Now, I'm not saying any of those manufacturers or CPGs weren't truly strategic partners, but did they really understand what was important to their buyer,
Mm.
right? Did they really understand what's important to the buyer in terms of like how they show up to the shopper,
Hmm.
right? And if you understand those things, then I think you can better prepare yourself, better insulate yourself against being you're the one
Mm.
that they're making an example of. Now, it could also be a retailer is just going to do what they're going to do, and they want to make the example no matter what, and
Sure.
that could still happen. But the more that you come with the shopper insights, the consumer
Hmm.
insights, understanding what is important to your customer and to their customer,
Yeah.
um, then that's really where RGM, because RGM is more than just the data and the analytics, right? It's really enablement. It's really helping our teams get to the right outcomes. And you can
Hmm.
get there any number of ways, but helping those sales teams build the story
Hmm.
and negotiate with their customer. That's another way that RGM can help fuel that top line growth through finding the right opportunities with the shopper, with the consumer.
Hmm. Sounds like you're a fan of OBPPC and using that as the top line growth.
I am a fan of bringing in the consumer and shopper insights along with the analytics.
Hmm. Hmm.
And whether you do, I think OBPPC can. I'm sympathetic to not every company has those big initiatives like
Sure.
OBPPC, right?
Hmm.
You don't need to go full blown OBPPC to have an impact.
Mm.
Any consumer shopper insights that you can weave in are just as impactful,
Yeah.
right? But yes, I mean that is
Hmm.
OBPPC is a
Sure.
big
Hmm.
is the I guess the gold standard example of doing that. Yeah.
Sure. So coming towards the end, but where do you see RGM in the next 12, 18 months? What are the big trends?
Yeah.
What should people
Yeah.
be focusing on, I guess?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the levers, it's probably understanding what the opportunities are, not just on the other levers that we talked about, but in pricing as well, right? Like that's going to getting information and data in that space is going to be even more important. And then what you hear out there in the marketplace is all about AI, right? AI, and now it's even generative AI, right? AI isn't even enough. We got to go to
Yeah.
the next level, right? And there's things that those tools can help you do, even just in terms of the fundamentals and getting your data right. Because like the issue that AI had before was if you didn't have all your data cleaned and connected in the right way, then putting an AI on top of bad data wasn't
Mm.
particularly helpful. But now the generative AI can actually help produce data, right? Help clean those things up. So like those are the things that you're going to see out there.
Hmm.
Some of them can help you even if you don't have the fundamentals yet in place, and others won't be. So it's going to be kind of tricky to navigate which one's really going to be able to help me in which situation.
Hmm. Um, but yeah, I'm ambivalent, to be honest. I think first of all, I think anything and everything is called AI today, even when it's not proper AI as they're taught in computing school.
It's true.
But the other thing is, I mean, there are certain things it can certainly help with. I think it's a useful tool with almost like the user of tools, right? It's you don't have
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
necessarily be able to write a very complex query or understand the data structures of large databases that may
Yeah.
not be for everybody's skill set. But
Right.
I mean, it
Yeah.
still can't collect research, right? It can't collect
Correct.
primary consumer insights. It probably can
Yeah.
generate insights. I'm not disputing that, but
Yeah.
there are things it's useful for, and there are things where it's
Mhm.
maybe more marketing hype than
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not suggesting everybody's got to go out there and do AI.
hmm.
What I'm saying is that's what you're going to hear a lot about.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
and it's up to you to decide, what's right for your organization. And
Hmm.
there's plenty of stuff. if you take that crawl, walk, run, fly,
Yeah.
mentality, um, if you're at the crawl stage, then what does that look like?
Hmm.
And what are the tools that you have access to or can get that can help you get to move up the ladder to
Hmm.
fly.
Hmm. Sure. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Joe. I think we're getting
Yeah,
towards the
pleasure.
end. It's been real pleasure and some great insights for our viewers. With this will also be recorded and has been recorded, and we will put it on PriceBeam's YouTube channel later today. So thank
Awesome.
you so much, Joe, for joining us, and
Yeah, thank you
for the
for
rest
having
of
me.
us, have a nice day. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, Finn.
Bye.